Have you ever experienced rejection? Rejection hurts, doesn't it? Regardless of why it happened, it hurts. But rejection does not have to hold you back. Rejection does not have to slow you down. It all depends on you. So, today we're going to talk about dealing with rejection. Get ready. Now, rejection really is all about not being accepted, not being acknowledged, not being received, being ignored, not being valued or appreciated. And so the way you respond to rejection reveals two things. And we're going to talk about those two things, and then we're going to jump down and talk about how to deal with rejection. Rejection reveals. It reveals who you are. What's in you by default comes out when you're in a crisis, because you don't have time to think, you don't have time to be pretty, you don't have time to formulate a response. It's just real and raw, as they say. So whatever you blurt out, whatever the thought that pops into your head, guess what? That was in there to begin with. So sometimes the person that we see in ourselves when we're in a crisis really surprises us. So when you're rejected, how do you respond? The way you respond to rejection reveals a lot about what's going on in you. So when the grape is squeezed, the juice comes out. So pay attention. How do you respond when you're rejected? Now, let me also explain something else. Rejection can also be used as a sign for you. Rejection can be a form of redirection. And in a case like that, if you're able to step outside yourself, to process your feelings, because it's okay to be hurt, guys. Listen, it's okay to say, I'm hurt, I'm hurting, I'm upset, I'm angry. It's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person if you admit your feelings. The problem comes when you sit and stay there. That becomes problematic, because now you're being driven by those feelings instead of you using those feelings to your advantage. The feelings are in control. So again, rejection can be a sign of redirection. Now, also, rejection can also determine how you respond to rejection, determines your outcome down the road. So if you are a person that is very sensitive to rejection, you need to start looking at ways to fortify yourself beforehand, and you need to be very keenly aware of how you're going to deal with the fallout of the rejection afterwards. And so that's all about coping, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you are rejection sensitive, if you're just really sensitive about rejection, your interaction with people, your social interaction decreases, and you don't like to be around people a lot. And when you are around people, you try to keep your interaction at a minimum, because what you're doing is you're guarding yourself, okay? Because you don't want to be hurt. So in order to do that, you start to avoid certain situations and certain people. Now, let me say, there are certain people in your life that you need to stay away from, okay? People that are trying to hurt you. For example, if a woman or a man, for that fact, is trying to get out of an abusive situation, then they may not want to be around that person in the beginning or ever again, depending on the extent of the abuse. That's a different situation. I'm talking about a person who is just really sensitive to the word no, and they really take it personal. So interaction decreases. You avoid certain situations. You don't want to put yourself out there. You stop trying because you may have hit a couple of no's. And because you've hit a couple of no's, you've taken that as something's wrong with me, or I don't want to be hurt anymore. And remember what I said in the beginning, sometimes the no is because we need to grow, right? We hear no, we need to grow. So we have to be mindful that we're not always taking things personally. Sometimes people say no, and it is a direct reflection on how they feel about us. They may not like us. We may annoy them. We may get on their nerves. We may have hurt them in the past. And so now we've hurt them, and now they want to hurt us. So right now we're talking about the person who is very sensitive to being rejected and what happens. The reason why they become that way is because they're completely unable to cope with rejection. So there are things that you can do to help you walk through life and be able to deal with rejection. People who are in acting, the field of acting, my goodness, if you talk to an actress, an actor, they will tell you all the times they've been rejected, and that can be a very cruel field, because it is in some way very superficial. So you could be rejected because of the way you look, and if you're not able to cope, it can wreak havoc on your self-esteem. It can wreak havoc on your value system and your worth. And so actors tend to struggle with worth and value and esteem, because they're constantly being told, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too short, you're too tall, you need to smile more, you need to smile less, constantly. And the people that are telling them this are the people that have the authority and power to make or break their career. So what do you do in a situation like that? So actors tend to struggle a lot with that. Now, getting back to looking at how you deal with rejection, a support system. You need to have a strong support system, not a support system that enables you. I talk about that, enabling a person or empowering a person. You want a support system that is going to love you unconditionally, believe in you, and support you without hesitation, but will also tell you the truth, because sometimes you're rejected for a good reason. You're nasty to someone, rude, and prideful, and conceited, and all these things, and you're rejected because of it. You need someone in your life to say, you know what, yeah, you were out of line. I mean, I understand why you said it. I understand where you're coming from, but the way you did that was completely unacceptable and rude. So in that support system, you need to be surrounded by the truth, okay? So that's really important. If you're going into a situation that you already know is potentially rejectful, so for example, families. Oh, we gotta love our families, right? We pick our friends, but we don't pick our families. So if you are in a family situation, you're going into a family situation, and you know that it could potentially go in that direction, right? It is something that sometimes we can avoid situations just so that we can keep our sanity or keep the peace. That's different, but there's some situations where we can't avoid it and we just have to go right in. Now, in a situation like that, and you know you're going to be dealing with some stuff, you can fortify yourself. If you're a person of faith, you can pray. There are other ways that you can build yourself up. You can remind yourself of who you are. You can remind yourself of the worth and the value that you bring. For example, I'll give you a really quick example. If you are going on a blind date, somebody set you up with a person, and you don't know what kind of person this individual is. You don't know if they're going to like you. You don't know if they're going to think you're pretty, or whatever. So you're going in blind. Before you do that, sit down and write out 5 traits about you that are really special, things that you like about yourself. And then don't just write them out, but after you write out those steps, then write out a paragraph describing yourself using those 5 traits. Now, see, guys, I'm giving you some good tips. I charge people for this kind of stuff. But anyway, so take those 5 traits and write a paragraph about you and describe yourself. So that's a way to build yourself up, so that if you go into a situation like a blind date and it doesn't work out, then you can go back and say, well, you know what? It didn't work out, but I'm not going to take it personal because I'm this, and this. And perhaps I'm just not a good match for this person, or they're not a good match for me. So that's one way you can cope with a situation. Now, if you are in a situation where you didn't see it coming, and it just kind of came out of left field at you. Now that is a little different because now you've got to go back after the fact and deal with how it made you feel. So one of the things you have to do in a situation like that is you have to remind yourself that you're loved, that you are accepted, and that you are special. And what that does is that counters those negative feelings that you're feeling after a situation like that. Because, after coming out of a situation like that, your emotions may possibly be all over the place. So now you've got to quickly gather them, harness them in, and the way to do that is to fall back to the truth. And again, it goes back to your support system. If you know who you are, and you know whose you are, and you have people in your life telling you the truth in love, and telling you and esteeming you and reminding you of the worth that you have and the value that you bring into their lives, into the lives of people around you. When you find yourself in a situation where you're rejected and it was unexpected, then you can go back and you can begin the healing process. Now, the level and the extent of your spiritual strength or your emotional stability or your mental health will determine how fast you bounce back from a situation like that. So rejection can hurt and does hurt, but it doesn't have to hold you back. In your rejection, if you have lashed out and said something that was very mean-spirited or harmful or hurtful, you don't have to allow that to push you into shame. Own it, accept it, acknowledge it, apologize for it, and if you have to make amends, and do it for the right reasons. And if that person or persons still does not receive you, let it go and be at peace. Be at peace at knowing that, okay, I didn't start this journey off right, but I ended it right. And celebrate that part of yourself because you just became a better person. You just grew. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that what I shared today helped you to recognize that although rejection is painful, you don't have to let it stop you. You can push through and persevere